there is this charge. For example, Catherine Nixey, she wrote a book titled The Darkening Age. The subtitle is The Christian Destruction of the Classical World. So she makes this charge that Christians destroyed the classical world, the Greeks and Romans and other ancient cultures. And what would you say to that?
It's amazing. And what they really did is preserve them. There's a wonderful book, Paul, called How the Irish Saved Civilization by Thomas Cahill, very good historian. And he showed that a lot of the pagan classics were saved by these Irish monks living in monasteries in the middle of nowhere. They were preserving this pagan wisdom. Now, there have been times when Christians destroyed temples and things like that, but they're the ones that preserve the legacy of that world and brought it forward. I mean, someone like Thomas Aquinas is taking Aristotle and helping to preserve him. So let me give just a good example of this. Oh, it drives me crazy when now there have been some bad things done in the name of colonialism. But today, a lot of the atheists want to claim that Christians are colonialists who are destroying the culture of Africa and India and places like. First of all, right now, Paul, you know, there are these people called Wycliffe Bible translators that go to these isolated tribes that don't even have a written language. They learn the language, they teach it, and they translate the Bible. If it wasn't for that, all these languages would be extinct. They would pass out. Even better, the secular humanists go into Africa and places like that, and they try to push the sexual revolution on these people that don't want it. That is cultural colonial exploitation, taking our ideas that have destroyed our culture and pressing it upon them, right? And now there have been times when Christians have pressed Christianity and Western culture, but that's not what's happening now. People like K.P. Yohannan, one of the great men from India, you know him? He started Gospel for Asia, GFA. He wants to help raise up indigenous missionaries in places like India and Pakistan around the world. And, you know, again, we're learning as well. We've made our mistakes in the past, but Christianity has helped to preserve and uplift so many of the cultures in the world. And right now, as the so-called Ivy Leagues are throwing out the pagan classics, it's conservative Christians who are saving them. Conservative homeschoolers, Paul, people who used to be Bible-only people, are now preserving these classics. And it's what, and you know what, Paul? Are you a fan of M. Night Shyamalan? He's a great director. He made the Sixth Sense and
I heard
Signs
about
and
him,
things.
yes.
Very, very good. And he is at least nominally Hindu, but his education was in Catholic schools in India. And a lot of his great movie making skills comes from these ideas that he's run in. I don't think he would call himself a Christian, but he has learned from these great schools and people like Paul Brand, who went into India and discovered the cause of leprosy, Hansen's disease, and did these things, or Mother Teresa, people that are out there in the world and trying to. And today, Paul, a lot of people say the most Christian country in the world is South Korea. And South Korea is sending missionaries, even into the Muslim world, very, very bravely sending missionaries in there. So again, we've made our mistakes, but if it wasn't for the Christian church, I think we would have lost most of those pagan classics. They're the ones that took the best and led it upward.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, in the Greek culture and across actually, even in Roman culture, they used to expose these unwanted babies. Like, I think it's called exposure.
Right, exposure, it's a kind of infanticide. But
Yeah,
you're right.
yeah,
You're exposing them, the
yeah.
weak children.
Christians stopped that
They did.
practice, and
They
they
stopped the
stopped.
gladiators.
Yes, the gladiators in the Colosseum, people were playing violent sports, and wild animals were eating these victims. And the Christians stopped those things. They stopped human sacrifice in many cultures.
Well, in India, they stopped sati, where the
Yeah,
woman burned herself. They stopped foot binding in China. A lot of
yeah,
those things, right? And the killing of baby girls. So there's been a lot of things where they've tried to bring this basic biblical ethic, which is actually there in other cultures. We just forget, right? So they've done a lot of good bringing, and just more recently bringing things like modern science. And see, Paul, as you know, okay, both India and China invented many incredible things long before they invented them in the West, right? Especially China with movable print and gunpowder and things like that. But why is it, Paul, that science as we know it was born in the West and not in the East? It's not that the Western scientists were more intelligent than the Chinese or Indian scientists, but the Indian, the Hindu and Buddhist scientists did not create science because they believed that the world was illusion. Maya is, I think, is the old Sanskrit word, that the word is illusion and we can't even trust our senses. It was only because the scientists in the West believed in a Christian or at least theistic God, a God of order and balance and harmony, who created a world that was meaningful and created our senses that could perceive that world. That's why they created modern science. And it is one of the most terrible ironies that science, which is a creation of a theistic worldview, has now been used by French people to attack the very thing that gave it birth. Right? So, and a lot of books have been written about this now, showing that, again, all the early modern scientists were Christians or at least strong theists, from Copernicus to Galileo to Newton to Faraday. So many of them were coming out of that. And again, we've sort of forgotten